the actions are completed, ongoing, you're getting rid of them. So during past meetings, we've also updated the goals and objectives so that they can better align with your community's needs. And I'm going to turn this over now to Anna. She's going to walk. Yeah.
I just started the recording. So like go right ahead, but I just wanted to let everyone know we're recording it so that we can watch it later for comment collection and share with others. So we did just start the recording. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie. I forgot to do that. So thanks for getting that started. Cool. And Anna's going to get started by giving you a brief just overview of the goals that we've talked about before, and then she's going to get you started thinking on some actions for this plan.
All right. Hey, everybody. So real quick, we just want to go through the revised goals for the 2023 to 2028 hazard mitigation plan. These are a little bit different from the goals from the previous plan. The goals are to minimize the loss of life and property from impacts of hazards, improve education and outreach efforts to protect community assets and critical facilities from hazards, increase coordination and capabilities to plan and implement projects to minimize loss from hazards, improve data collection, dissemination, and redundancy to reduce impacts from hazards. So try to keep those in the back of your mind as we move throughout this discussion today and think about action items that will help us accomplish these goals. So for those of you who were here with us last time, we talked a little bit about project categories. For those who were not, no worries. We're going to go through them fairly extensively today. The community rating system, which Effingham County participates in, groups mitigation actions into 6 different categories. Those are natural and beneficial functions of floodplains, emergency services, preventative actions, structural projects, property protection, and public information and education. And these are, again, these are different types of mitigation actions that you can accomplish. So let's look at each of these in a little bit of detail. Preventative activities keep flood problems from getting worse. So those can be floodplain regulations, setbacks, changes to your building code or planning and zoning code. Property protection activities are usually undertaken by property owners on a building by building or parcel level basis. So that could be retrofitting older homes, relocating older homes, acquiring and demolishing homes that have been repeatedly damaged, or elevating homes out of harm's way. Natural resource protection activities preserve or restore natural areas or the natural functions of floodplain and watershed areas. So these are things like open space preservation, where we want to make sure that the floodplain is functioning as it was intended to. It could be the creation of environmental corridors or water quality improvements. Emergency services measures are taken during an emergency to minimize its impact. So this could be threat recognition, hazard warning and response operations, or critical facilities protection. Structural projects are exactly what they sound like. They keep floodwaters away from an area with a levee, reservoir, or other flood control measure. So that could be levees or flood walls, channel modifications, or storm drain improvements. And then last but not least, public information activities advise property owners, potential property owners, and visitors about the hazards, ways to protect people and property from the hazards, and the natural and beneficial functions of local floodplains. So that can range from map information to outreach projects, to having resources in your local library, to environmental education and real estate flood disclosure. So those are our project categories. Keep those also in the back of your mind as we move throughout this discussion. Those are, again, the types of mitigation actions that you can employ. So since our last meeting, we have gone through all of your related plans in Effingham County. The comp plan, the Parks and Rec comp plan, the wildfire protection plan, public awareness, education, and preparedness program, the EOP, the master transportation plan, and y'all's budget book for fiscal year 2023. What we've done is reviewed those plans in their entirety and pulled out action items, concepts, goals, objectives that we found in those plans so that we can align them with the mitigation actions that you create today for the hazard mitigation plan. We don't want these plans to be standalone documents. We want them to be well coordinated with each other and accomplish some of these similar goals. So we've pulled out all those action items actually, since I'm sharing, you can see here, we've pulled them all out and classified them based on what plan they were in. And we're going to use those today to, to drive our discussion. So what we've found from those related plans is that there were some recurring themes, 6 to be exact. So we found that Effingham County, Rincon, Guyton, and Springfield cared about natural resource protection, emergency management, stormwater management and retention, sustainable development, education and outreach, and cooperation among municipalities. That's a lot to cover in one meeting, so we're going to break it up into 2. So at this meeting, we're going to generate mitigation actions for emergency management, education and outreach, and cooperation among municipalities. At the next meeting, we'll cover natural resource protection, sustainable development, and stormwater management and retention. So the rest of this meeting is going to follow a similar pattern. We're going to take a moment, and I'm hoping that everybody has a cell phone or a second screen, and you can navigate to slido.com. Like Lindsay mentioned, you may have used this before at a previous meeting. Slido allows for live interaction. It'll populate your ideas in real time to the PowerPoint slides. So take a minute to navigate to slido.com, and you can enter the code Effingham, and it will pull up the poll for you as we move throughout the rest of this presentation.
1333 1333.
However, we don't want to discourage you from using other avenues to contribute as well. So if you'd prefer to simply unmute or enter your ideas in the chat, that's great too. Any form of participation that works for you works for us. Slido, you will be contributing anonymously. So any idea that you punch into Slido, it will just show up as contributed by anonymous. However, we might ask people to unmute to elaborate on some of their ideas. So let's dive in. We're going to start with emergency management. I'm going to turn it back over to Lindsay really quick. The rest of this presentation will introduce a topic. We'll go through some example projects that Weston and Sampson has completed in that realm. We'll review the action items that came from your related plans that are related to that topic, and then we'll ask you to generate new mitigation actions. So Lindsay's going to run through a couple projects related to emergency management.
Also, I would just suggest that it's okay if we have a repeated action from our past 2017 to 2022 plan. This is really an opportunity to get the juices flowing, to really think about actions that we can take to protect Effingham and the cities and residents as we move into the 2023-2028 phase. So we'll do a little legwork and call out any ideas that are that we've shared before, but don't feel like you need to remember what was in the previous plan. Like we can generate a discussion through this means today, and all ideas are welcome.
Before we get into emergency management, we did cover a lot, so just wanted to pause for a second and leave some room for questions. If anyone had a question about what we just talked about, wanted us to explain anything a little bit better, you can just unmute yourself and let us know or throw something in the chat.
I did not have to enter a code for Slido. It is just taking me to our meeting 4 link. Is that what's happening with everyone else that's trying to link in?
Did you scan the QR code?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you scan the QR code, it'll take you just directly to our questions. If you go to slido.com and then you'll have to type in Effingham to get to the meeting. So yeah, the QR code's just a faster way to get there.
Okay, were people successful in reaching that?
Do the questions populate as you go through and get to that part of the presentation?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So the questions are linked to the slides. So when we get to a slide, it'll pop up a Slido slide, and then the question will show up on your phone. So yeah, it should be blank right now. There is a Q&A section. If it's easier for you to type in a question on there versus the chat, if you don't want to keep going back and forth between the Teams chat and Slido, we'll keep an eye on that too. So just anywhere you want to throw any questions or comments in. All right, if we don't have anything else, so emergency management plays an important role when it comes to responding for hazards. So if you think about all of the staff and all of the infrastructure that work together to keep emergency management running smoothly, think about that and then think about any features within the category that might have increased vulnerability. And if there are any, what can we do to increase the resiliency, decrease the hazards in this department? So we're going to just talk through a few examples and some different projects that we've done within this category. So emergency management relies heavily on power and communications networks. So if the emergency systems, if the power grid shuts down, will the emergency systems stay online? If they lose power, do they have backup power? Are there generators available, which could either be stationary or portable generators? Where do they get their backup power? So that's really important. Just how do we keep emergency management running during a hazard? It's important to be able to rely on multiple sources of energy to increase redundancy within the system. And so this graphic on here shows a microgrid. So instead of only relying on power from an external utility, if you have renewable power, if you have battery backups, generators, and those are connected into your emergency management, you're becoming less reliant on these outside sources that could go down during a hazard.
Okay, just to clarify real quick, when we say this, are we talking about the actual emergency management itself, or are we talking about systems overall?
So this covers, it's kind of an overall category, so it can cover like really specific, like, you know, you don't have enough fire trucks, all the way up to like the entire system. We've talked about like communications networks. So it's really anything that you can think of. Like these are pretty broad, they can be broad categories, and we can always reorganize actions. So however you want to think of it, I guess.
Okay, we do, a lot of it does have redundant power. But I will say that we still do have some of our critical infrastructure, such as a couple of well sites and some lift stations that we're working on getting backup power to. But yeah, that would have to be in there as far as continue to pursue grant funding for backup power for all critical infrastructure.
Okay.
And Clint, does that include for the municipalities also for Guyton, Springfield, and Rankin? That'd be separate questions.
Refer to them. I would imagine everybody's probably in the same boat. I know the cities do have a lot of redundancy. I'm just not completely certain if it's on every single utility or not.
I know Guyton's waiting on, they got some grant funding for generators at a few locations. It's not 100%. There's locations that will need it there as well.
All Rankin utilities are on generator backup. So we have 100% generator backup in Rankin.
Can I just ask a question about that to clarify? On the generator backup, are these powered by diesel fuels, propane? Do they need to be resupplied during long-term outages?
They're all diesel backup generators, and they will have to be supplied by fuel, Mr. Roy.
Okay, thank you.
We do have a fuel management plan in the county that we keep up with. So we have a fuel truck that is available and does go around and refill as needed.
Excellent. One of the lessons that we've learned in some of these major outages, like hurricanes in Puerto Rico, sometimes you can't get the power, the diesel backup to the generators, and the generators sit there idle because they've run out of their power source. So it's just something to think about in terms of how you can get the backup energy supply to your generators, as well as having the generators there.
Yeah, and that's part of that our debris management plan as well is our primary routes that get opened up are just not only move people around, but also making sure we have access to this critical infrastructure as fast as possible.
Clint, are those parts is that part of the emergency operations plan? Are those elements the debris management?
It's
is that part of the EFP?
It's an appendix to it or an annex to it.
Okay.
Awesome. I'm going to jump to the next slide, but we're going to pause after this for some more open response in Slido. So if you think of anything else kind of pertaining to what we've talked about so far, then we can throw that in Slido in just a minute. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen right now is a climate viewer. So assessing vulnerabilities in a community is really important. It's a very important step to mitigating hazards. So there's different programs available to assist a community conducting vulnerabilities analyses. There's software and there's programs that can help. So the climate viewer on the screen right now, which is something that we've created at Weston and Sampson, is actually a tool that we created for a transportation authority in Massachusetts to prepare for and respond to a natural hazard event. So the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, which runs the subway system in the Boston area, asked us to develop a dynamic storm tracker application, which was intended to track Tropical Storm Henry's impact on the authority's assets. So looking at low-lying critical infrastructure that are really susceptible to flood inundation and trying to figure out which infrastructure is going to flood and when so that they can protect it ahead of time before it's actually impacted. So within this application, our team added storm projections and from the National Hurricane Center, NOAA tide gauges to look at water elevations. Statistics on power outages. The application told the authority which stations were going to be impacted so that they can respond by deploying flood barriers or other protective measures. So kind of along the same lines of that, we don't have quite as much information, detailed information on your infrastructure, and we didn't bring in, because there's not a big storm coming, we didn't bring in as much of that data, but we did build a climate and storm viewer on this platform for Effingham County, which is shown in this clip just to kind of give you an idea of some different resources that you can use to help get an idea of hazards, how they could impact you, and what you can do to prepare. So I'm gonna
Lindsay,
take over.
for that particular project, the system was developed very rapidly, right? Like they knew a big storm was coming. There need to be an understanding of not only the subways but the bus lines, and the inundation areas of inundation and what was at risk. And it's Steve, probably, I don't know, you could possibly jump in here too, but like the implications for understanding critical assets, whether they're transportation or other things, our water treatment plants, our public utilities, our hospitals, understanding where we, are going to see issues a little bit in advance has been a really powerful tool to manage impacts.
Yeah. So this tool was developed pretty quickly because it was, the day, I think, before the storm hit. So they developed it pretty rapidly. It was like overnight. There was a ton of people working on it. They since then developed it a little bit further and kind of fixed some of the glitches that may have come up. But yeah, it's really just an example of like a type of critical facility that you can put in and monitor. But it doesn't have to necessarily be like a subway system. It could be any of your critical facilities. So it's a really great viewer that you can modify to use however would work best for you. So I'm going to share my screen and see, we can navigate around a little bit and just show you the type of information that we have in there. So can everybody see my screen right now? Okay. So we pulled in FEMA flood zones. So we have the county outlined FEMA flood zones are shown within the county in this blue layer. And then we also have sea level rise, which is a NOAA layer. And there's a slider, so we're looking at sea level rise. Right now you're looking at with 1 foot of sea level rise, and then you slide it across and it shows you 5 feet. So you can really look at the difference of extents, like where just with an extra 4 feet of sea level rise, how much more land area it's going to cover. So within this viewer, we pulled in GIS data that came from your GIS site. So we have GIS data, we have some facilities, we have hazard areas, including flood zones. We have previous hurricane and tornado tracks, which I can turn those on. So we have our different tracks. Some of the larger named systems are shown on here, so you can see where the hurricane or tropical storm passed over the county. We have tornado tracks shown. There we go. We have the tornado tracks, and we can also show different seismic hazard zones.
So this is the first time for FEMA that we will need to be thinking about and talking about climate change in our hazard mitigation planning. Those guidelines, we talked about this a little bit in the first couple meetings, but as a reminder, the new guidelines for the hazard mitigation plans and what they need to contain and what they need to review is effective in April of this year. FEMA introduced the new guidelines last spring of 2022. So our plan for that we're working on together will be one of the very first ones that are seen, in the context nationally and regionally, and for the state of Georgia. So this is a really exciting opportunity to incorporate this information into our multi-jurisdictional plan.
Yeah, thanks, Jeannie. And so, yeah, it's a really, it's a helpful tool. The one issue is that NOAA right now does not currently show sea level rise extents into Effingham County, but we have gotten news that they are going to be extending it. So right now within Effingham County, this blue is just your FEMA flood zone. So when we look at the different sea level rises, then the blue inside here doesn't change because it doesn't include sea level rise. But in future iterations, I don't think we know yet when they're releasing it, but once they do release it, then the sea level rise extents will extend into here, and it's just going to help you all to really get the big picture idea of what's happening within your county over the next couple years. Anna, if you can jump back in, I think you're going to be covering some of the Slido conversation and talking about some actions from other plans next.
Okay, so let's look at some of the action items or concepts that were from your related plans regarding emergency management. So there was some fire suppression training for staff, addressing the decline of the fire department, potentially contracting those services to the county, conducting periodic exercises to evaluate support function responsibilities, developing a critical facility maintenance and protection plan, reducing hazardous fuels, and adding signage along roads to mark hydrants. So when we open this up to Slido, think about some of these concepts that came from your related plans, but by no means are you limited to these ideas. We want to hear everything that you're thinking regarding emergency management. So let's open up that first poll, and everyone should see that on their Slido. And you can go ahead and type in some actions that you think would be beneficial regarding emergency management and response.
Lindsay, there's a couple right off the bat that aren't really applicable. The one about the fire department, I'm not exactly sure when that ever came in, but that really doesn't need to be there.
Okay.
That one sounded like it was maybe municipally generated, Clint. Is that a possibility that was like some concerns from a municipality that wanted to help have further assistance?
That's
It
a good
was.
question. It's not applicable today.
Okay. Great. Clint, the new emergency operations planning that's being updated currently.
It is. We just had our last last two ESF meetings, so we'll be moving to the final draft now.
Were there emerging themes out of that were different than your previous?
We had some
emergency
updates. I wouldn't say there was anything tremendous though. I think the biggest change we found was within ESF. It was ESF 8.
That's a great suggestion. And would that be applicable to both the county and the municipalities?
Yes, that one would.
It seemed, because I think Rankin, I believe, has has backup power for our I think that's what we just mentioned. Yeah. Guyton is getting funding. The county needs funding. Rankin has 100% backup power.
Looks like there's a couple people typing, so I just want to give everyone another minute to get their ideas down if they have them. So increased training for staff. Would that be awesome? In regards to the training for staff, do y'all have an EOC and do you do sort of practice drills if there was a hurricane and practice opening the EOC, anything like that?
We will be. We're actually in the process of redesigning our EOC at the moment.
Awesome.
So yeah, once we get that into effect, we're actually going to have a much more functional EOC. So yes, we will be.
That's great.
I'm wondering too if Clint, some of the updated emergency operations plan, we should probably try to dovetail that so that we're including that information. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
All right, looks like we've got some good ideas for emergency management.
I know we also had in our last plan, which will be getting carried over into this one, we talked a lot about public education and just training events for to prepare for hazards, which will kind of lead us into the next category.
Which is education and outreach. That was a good segue, Lindsay. Thank you. So education and outreach. Lindsay's going to talk to us again about a few example projects or ways that you can carry out mitigation actions related to education and outreach, and then we'll move on to that Slido poll.
All right, so public education and outreach play a really large role in hazard mitigation. So oftentimes there are small tasks, which we've talked about a little bit in the past. There's training events that you can do, information that you can provide to families, the things that they can do at home to protect either their family or their neighborhood from a hazard. So this could be something as simple as like providing a flyer on testing smoke alarms to reduce fire risk, proper brush dumping locations to reduce fire risk and flooding, and having an emergency evacuation plan in place. We have a few examples on the screen. One of them is a flyer that we made to inform the public about climate change and tick-borne illnesses and how that increases. We also have created flyers in multiple languages so that we can increase outreach to different groups of people. It's also really important to be gathering information from the community. So the community really has a lot of knowledge on hazard impacts in their neighborhood. You know, they're living there, they're seeing stuff happen every day. They might see the specific area flood all the time that isn't necessarily like a large scale thing that we're going to see on any flood models. So the community is often a great source of information when you're trying to solve a problem. So as part of this project, we are going to be doing some public outreach and engagement. We're going to be posting some information on the website, just really giving people an outline of our planning process, what we're doing. We'll be asking for feedback through a survey, which is a really great way to get information from the community. We're going to be getting feedback on the draft hazard mitigation plan, both from you all and from the general public. So kind of taking this into just general education and outreach, try to think about any information that would be beneficial to share with the community or any feedback that you could gather and how we could make that an action for your plan. If you can jump to the next slide. So I pulled this from, I think it was the county Facebook page. So you already do a lot of public outreach and training events. So a lot of these are organized through emergency management. The slide on the screen was from a 3rd grade fire safety, and they did a pre-test and a post-test. So it's really, this is a good chance to think about other educational opportunities, how you can tie them into the school program or other public events that you're doing. So think about large scale and small scale. So either just a small community action or something countywide or even larger. Can you jump to the next slide? Thank you. So developing community emergency response teams and working with volunteers to conduct wellness checks on aging community members, things like that. It's also a great way to incorporate outreach events. So this isn't really typical outreach, but this is just how you can get your community involved, things that the community can do to really help out and help reduce hazards and just, you know, make everyday life better in the community. Next slide. And also looking at vulnerable populations, having a designated heating or cooling center or a charging location during power outages really reduces hazard impacts and helps the community stay up to date on things like closures or any hazards that are going to hit if they don't have power at home. Community members aren't always aware of the emergency shelter locations or if you have a charging station or if you have a heating or cooling center. So providing outreach materials can really help to bridge that gap and make sure that everybody knows what is available to them.
Okay, so looking at some of the action items from your related plans, from your comp plan, your public awareness plan, one theme that was emerging was that you have a growing demographic of families and a growing population in general. So increasing dissemination of information to the public is going to be extremely important in regards to hazard preparedness. Other ideas were reaching citizens regarding mitigation actions on their private property, a community cleanup day, increasing public awareness of wetland and flood zone sensitivity, informing small businesses about emergency preparedness and actions they can take, creating a code enforcement division, and outreach regarding fire safety. So again, you are not limited to these ideas or concepts. These are just ideas that we found in your related plans. But let's go ahead and move to the next Slido poll.
Do you, Anna, do you want to
Yep.
leave that slide up for a minute if anyone has any comments on any of these actions? Kind of like Clint gave us a heads up that one of the actions on the previous slide wasn't really applicable anymore.
We do have a code enforcement division now.
Okay, so Effingham County has one. Do Springfield, Guyton, or Rincon?
Springfield does have one.
Rankin's got one.
Awesome.
And
Guyton, we're working on it in Guyton. We have a code enforcement individual that does that for us also.
Great. Great. I'll go ahead and open up that next poll.
What I'm thinking is that these actions, if they're not already carried over from the previous plan, that we would include those since they are representative of multiple plans, and we'll have an opportunity to look at these all again as they start to populate our draft new 2023 to 2028 plan. So we'll look at this again, and if ideas occur to you post meeting, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us and add those ideas back in, and even directly to Clint and Teresa Concanon and others. It's a great opportunity to, like, it doesn't end today, right now. Ideas can occur to us anytime, but like we sometimes digest things later and we think, oh, we should have said that. Well, let's capture that. Just shoot us a quick email, any of us. But thank you.
Are all of the municipalities active on social media? Twitter can be a great way for emergency management departments to get news out, alerts out. Social media can be a great way to spread information, so that's a great idea. I know at Charleston County, where I come from, we use social media a lot to do outreach regarding hurricane preparedness. We always did little videos before hurricane season, and those can be really impactful.
Clint, what is the status right now of, I know that other Georgia communities are using social media. Where are you in that? How is Effingham County sitting right now?
we extensively use Facebook, but right now, that I believe we do a little bit with Twitter, but right now that's the only platforms we're really authorized to utilize.
Okay. And that's another important thing, like that sometimes we don't have the authorization to use certain types of accounts, and maybe that is an objective, that there are multiple venues to reach people, and maybe that is a goal that we try to get that authorization to use the other platforms, or other platforms that are reaching extensive numbers of people.
There's some great suggestions in here. Local churches or club meetings are wonderful ways to get information out. You can do little talks about flood insurance, hurricane preparedness. Town hall meetings are great to have every so often. You could even have a request a speaker link on your website where, someone from emergency management or planning could come and talk to local school groups, church groups about hazard mitigation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Also, because the making sure that we have a way for like a whole community voices to emerge people that may not be typically at our meetings like this. We really do want to reach everyone and figure out strategies to do that.
Gina, I know from other hazard mitigation plans that we've done, there's been a focus on new residents and getting the message out to new residents, like a welcome package of, you know, how do I sign up for the reverse 911, code red alert systems? Where do I go if I have a problem and I need to get materials or charge my phones and power outages, all the information that they should know in like a packet, you know, a welcome packet to new residents. So that has come up frequently a number of times of making that part of the welcoming to new people.
Yeah, those are really great points. Clint, what is your thought about that? Or Hannah or Kristen? Like, I know you guys probably are thinking of that too.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Especially the packet for like doing. I know recently they did through our development services. They've started building some little pamphlets to give out, garnered specifically towards certain ideas, like certain projects. But this might be one to add to that.
I definitely think it would be worthwhile, especially because y'all have a growing demographic of families.
The city of Rankin just started posting on its city website a newspaper of things that you can use when you come back into the community and things like that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great, especially because like a lot of communities are also seeing a change, like a lot of coastal communities are seeing like a movement out of areas of particularly high hazard and into, you know, counties a tier back from ocean facing. So we do know that we see a population, not only that too, but like also affordability. Like we have certain areas that are more affordable than others, and we're seeing a migration of people, you know, for a variety of reasons. But like Effingham and its cities would be target for like out of the hustle and bustle of the Savannah metro area. And you probably already see that now.
Oh, it's definitely bleeding over very quickly.
Yeah, I would guess that.
Yes, providing to real estate agents is a fantastic way to get information out. And could someone maybe elaborate on what the chamber packets are? If anyone wants to unmute and elaborate on that, that would be great. It sounds like a good way to get the info out to new residents.
Yeah, and also involving the chamber in our discussions now too. Like we could definitely make some phone calls there if anyone's got a specific contact. That's who we like. That's a great example of who we could talk to.
I do. I can send it to you.
Hello, this is Lamisha. The Chamber of Commerce each year or every other year puts together booklets of information that contains county-wide information on all the municipalities, the county, different services that's provided, contact numbers, and they have new business or new resident packets. So it's a one-stop shop. So if someone is new to the community, they can go to the chamber and pick up this information. Typically, the chamber makes this information available at the city halls and at the county office. So this would be a good way to provide information to those that are new in the community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, I totally agree. I think that would be a great way to incorporate some hazard information, even including a printout of evacuation routes would be, you know, a good, easy thing to add into that packet.
Yeah, the know your zone.
Know your zone, right. I'll also say that providing this information to real estate agents to pass out to home buyers is credited by the community rating system. So that's something to look into for your community rating system program. If you're not already doing that, it's a really great and easy way to score some points.
Can I ask a question about seasonality of residents? We work with a number of communities. Their population changes dramatically from the winter to the summer. Do you have any of that occurring?
Not really. Ours is mostly an all-year population.
Okay.
Watch out, they could be coming. If they're smart, they're already looking for like affordable second home areas that are close by, you know, areas that they may have known and loved as they were growing up. To like anticipate that this could be coming.
Right. And I raised that question because the year-round residents, the outreach to them is going to be a lot different than a seasonal or short-term resident that needs to get information about what to do during an emergency.
I like this idea about the open house at schools. That's a great place for a representative from emergency management to go and give a little talk. Also, I think this suggestion got bumped to the bottom, but I saw All Hazards Community Expo, which is a very interesting idea. Charleston County did an All Hazards Expo once as well. It's an easy thing you can put on a Saturday afternoon outside Town Hall, and have all the departments represented. You know, the fire stations could come and bring a truck. The police could come. I think that's a great idea. Looks like we've got one more typing.
What's the, it's actually a program that's designed to help the community get to know and meet their emergency first responders. But I want to say that it's also closely tied to the one where it's like visit a truck, you know, but like the fire trucks come out, the police cars come out, they bring out excavators and bulldozers from the public works departments, and kids go and get a chance to actually see inside of these big, you know, first responder type vehicles. But a lot of times communities use those as an opportunity to disseminate information. I think on an annual basis, it's held in October because it's also a chance to get people ready for like the Halloween, you know, dangers and stuff like that. I don't remember, for some reason it's always like in October.
Are you talking
And a
about
lot of our
National Night
communities.
Out?
Is that National Night Out? Is that this? Yes, I think that is it. And then the like big truck thing is something separate, but it seems like I have them crossed together. I have small boys. We get very excited about the big trucks.
Yeah, no, and think about, are these opportunities to connect in with the community lifelines, the hospitals, the things like that that Megan's thinking of, or can we expand that to incorporate more of our like primary facilities that need to be up and operational, and get like have our community get to know them. The health department is a really good suggestion. I know that does this fall Clinton in the coastal health district?
We are Coastal Health District.
Yeah, so I don't know if Soroya Morris is still there. She's wonderful to coordinate with.
I don't recognize that name.
So that's a very good idea.
All right, y'all.
So
There's-
great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's some great suggestions here for outreach and education. We can definitely develop some mitigation actions from these suggestions. Let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to talk now a little bit about cooperation among municipalities. It's a hugely important concept in hazard mitigation planning to be coordinating across jurisdictional lines. Some suggestions from your related plans included having regular meetings with the cities and the county, pursuing public-private partnerships, and exploring some joint parks projects, which we might talk more about at the next meeting where we're talking about open space preservation and natural resource preservation. But that being said, please, if you have joint parks project suggestions, throw them in the chat. Any thoughts on these? Do y'all have a regular type meeting at all where you sit down together?
I believe the Board of Commissioners and at least the city of Lincoln have had meetings between their entities lately. I can't
Okay.
really speak for between Effingham and Guyton and Effingham and Springfield.
What kind of meetings are you talking about, just specifically to parks or just all planning?
All planning.
They have at least a yearly meeting. We typically have a community retreat that involves the county, all the cities, the Board of Education, the hospital, the IDA, the chamber, and in some form at least once a year.
Wow.
And there were at times but they're planning about trying to go back to maybe doing quarterly or at least twice a year.
Thank you.
Lamisha, those sound like really perfect opportunities to like engage in emergency management and hazard mitigation planning discussions as part of those existing meetings. Like wherever we have like an opportunity to leverage meetings that already occur instead of creating new meetings, that is really ideal. Are there certain leaders that maybe we don't have on this phone call that we could also engage?
I would say that typically what happens, each entity has an opportunity to present. So if there was information that Clint wanted to provide to the community, he could coordinate through Tim.
So we think about regular meetings as getting together frequently to just keep each other in the loop and let each other know what's going on in your jurisdiction and maybe how another jurisdiction can help you with a project so that we're reducing duplication of effort. And I think having quarterly meetings is a great idea to just, they don't have to be long, but just to stay informed about what's going on in all the municipalities. We're going to talk.
That's an excellent suggestion because where that comes into play too, and important is, you know, as we're moving through our hazard mitigation planning, we want to think about like that element that we need to put forth is how are we going to maintain this 2023 to 2028 plan, and in fact, what did we do for the 2017 to 2022 plan elements? And if we didn't have an opportunity because we all have busy lives and responsibilities and roles, what systems can we create that help maintain our plan, keep those these really great conversations going during the time period? And I think the quarterly meeting is good. I know, Clint, you said you have a meeting with other jurisdictions, you know, other local areas within the compact, but maybe this is an opportunity to have this group meet on some routine basis, whoever can join. So there is a continuous conversation within this group. Anna, in your experience working in Charleston County as a floodplain manager, how did Charleston County achieve this, like this continuous conversation?
Sure. So the Charleston County Hazard Mitigation Plan represents 17 different jurisdictions and also includes the utility groups in the area, so water and sewer. We have 5 meetings a year, so just about quarterly. And essentially those meetings are to gain information about what's going on in all of the other jurisdictions, and they're about an hour. And people, may need help with a grant, maybe experiencing repeated flooding in an area that's new. It just helps you stay on the same page together. And we actually go through our hazard mitigation plan annually, and keep it fairly updated through those 5 meetings a year, so that the 5-year update isn't as large of a or daunting of a process. And we've found that that's really been beneficial for Charleston County. It maintains your lines of communication. And again, it sort of takes a chunk out of this 5-year update and helps you stay on top of things each year.
And I can imagine that it's like you gain efficiencies by providing a forum for people to routinely coordinate and discuss, leverage, really projects and activities that could occur across a region, introduce other people's voices, like have an opportunity for, say, the United Way staff, the different congregations, like an opportunity for their voices to be heard. Clint, I know everyone's got a lot of meetings, but is that an idea that we should talk about and further discuss?
We can. Obviously, one of the challenges a lot of times is actually getting participation.
Yes.
But yeah, it's something we can discuss for the future.
I think that would go a long way towards like having this not be such a big heavy lift each time, and that way we know that as we're working on ancillary plans that are relevant, that we still keep that touch into hazard mitigation planning. I don't know, Steve, if you've seen that in other areas that we've been able to help. This is a unique, but it being a multi-jurisdictional, just like Anna was talking about for Charleston County, but
Yeah,
having an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great idea and concept, but I also agree with Clint that getting participation is probably the biggest hurdle. Without some incentive there of, hey, there are grant funds available. Let's get together and talk about how we can go after a specific grant to purchase generators or enact some planned action element. So if there's something specific there, yes, you'll get the people. So I think the meetings have to be pretty targeted and focused rather than let's just meet quarterly. That's just been my experience. And I know Anna's may be a little bit different, but you got to put something on the table to get people to attend.
Yeah, and the grant funding is a major reason of this. So like when we have an opportunity to tie the Georgia Emergency Management staff back in here, I think the regional specialist, Corey, who does a lot of the grant coordination, that would be a really good opportunity to plug right in to Steve's point on having specific objectives for each meeting. Also, like sharing the responsibility for doing this, like with our city staff that are on the phone, and they might have ideas of like kind of rotating leadership responsibility. That often helps with public planning. So like my hat of being in the public sector for several decades, we don't count how many. I know that sharing that responsibility for leading meetings also is a successful way to have participation.
Definitely. Thank you, Jeannie. Let's talk a little bit about, if we think we're done with this slide, let's talk a little bit about hazard mitigation for utilities. It's important to bring them into the conversation when we're talking about hazard mitigation. Megan, I don't know if you would be willing to jump in and talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, So my background is in wastewater and water, mostly collection systems and transmission. But I dabble a little bit in stormwater as well. And this has become more and more of a topic of conversation, especially for coastal communities, because the water utilities and especially the wastewater utilities are so susceptible to floodwaters and to needing to be resilient after emergencies and hurricanes and massive flooding and whatnot, because the focus is never on the utilities, it is on everything else related to the human beings. But we still need water to work, and we still need wastewater to go somewhere other than the environment. So I kind of threw out the things that came first to mind of where we would look to make sure that resiliency was shored up for pump stations and collection systems and whatnot. This is not an exhaustive list, but is certainly a start, and that would be the elevations for key electrical equipment, double checking that those are above the flood elevation. Sometimes these go in, and the flood elevation was not well mapped by FEMA, or it was not known. And I've been on pump stations where it's not even a floodplain, but it gets 10 feet of water stacked over top of the pump station. So knowing which stations need to make sure that they're above the flood elevations for that area. Flood proofing for key assets. Again, because of the wastewater background, but suction lift stations and making sure that those suction lift pumps are above the flood elevation, that the hatches are flood proof, that your sewer manholes are above the flood elevation, just to keep from having an inundation of water at your wastewater treatment plant and then causing your wastewater treatment plant to get backed up. Looking for those I&I problem areas. Generators, redundant electrical supply. We talked about that at the early onset to this meeting. Power continuity for pump stations, treatment plants, booster stations, potable water resource protections, access post-disaster critical assets. All of these kind of really tie into how do we prepare for a disaster ahead of something that we know is coming, like a hurricane, and then how do we recover from it afterwards? What does that plan look like for each of the individual utility companies, and where can we have some crossover to make sure that those communities that don't necessarily have enough staff to manage the roadways, the buildings, the utilities, also are getting enough support from other folks. I know Charleston, familiar with CWS and Mount Pleasant, larger utilities, North Charleston Sewer District, larger utilities. So when they get everything done on their plan, they go and they help out the town of James Island and the city of Folly Beach, because they're smaller communities and they have a staff of very limited number of people to make everything happen that needs to be happening for preparedness. So those are just kind of toss out of ideas.
Yeah, and what we do know is that our in quote coastal events are not just bright ocean face coastal events. Like these storms, we know, travel inland. They do so at different rates. Like we have weather systems that hold those storms over our inland areas for extended periods of time, and we have flood events because of it. And we just need to start thinking a little bit beyond just pure ocean coastal events, because the flooding and other hazards affect us at different levels. So these are some obvious ones that we've run into. As Megan was alluding to, our bigger systems can help our smaller systems, and making sure that we're thinking along those areas.
And this also covers water plant intakes. Turbidity in rivers goes up. That decreases the potability of the water and decreases the efficiency of its treatment. It includes the wastewater treatment plants are always in the lowest elevations, so the elevation of that river, or having a levee system, and then access to get in there to and inspect places and make sure that they are operating and functioning, and that you don't have sewer overflows and whatnot, so that you can start getting back to normal as fast as possible. Those all tie into that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. So keeping that in mind, everything that Megan's just told us, and Jeannie, we want to think about, are the necessary relationships in place for that to happen? post-disaster.
So a lot of this is in the emergency operations plan. Clint, I know this is like this is none of this is going to be new or anything for you, but like just thinking about strategic facilities even, and who do we need in the conversation that may not be here today, but that we can still engage.
Kristen, are you on the line?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, Kristen is actually probably going to be one of the primary partners as far as this part of it's concerned, which I know they're very involved with. And Kristen, I think, has been on all these calls.
Yes. Yes, thanks, Kristen, for all your help thus far too.
And as far as especially water and sewer within Effingham, Springfield, and Guyton, EOM is the contractor that handles that, which makes things a little bit simpler, especially as far as sharing assets in an emergency.
And all these things you mentioned, I mean, we do struggle with them on some of the existing areas, and I know the counties and cities have worked on improving like design specifications and things to address some of this, but we do have areas where we're having to relocate electrical equipment or do larger projects in the future because of some of these items and the extent of the cost on trying to get it protected as well.
And that may be something to dive into, not too deeply, but just identify that there are capital improvement projects that are planned out that help to, mitigate these things, because in the future, this, station or this plant is going to be upgraded to include these. I worked at a plant up in the city of Columbia, and they've got their discharges on a gravity. And so the effluent line, when it does flood, they've got a levee, so they're protected from the water getting at the treatment plant, but their effluent can't release because there's too much head stacked up against it. So part of their capital improvement program was to put in an effluent pump station in order to ensure that that effluent gets out in the event of a massive flooding in the Congaree River. That kind of stuff also ties into this, and if identified as being a critical item that would be better served, mitigated during flood events, it could be something that could get grant funding in that regard.
Yes,
Awesome.
Megan, haven't we also worked on road systems to critical assets, wastewater plants, and making sure those roads are elevated, and worked for FEMA, work towards FEMA funding, brick funding, or hazard mitigation?
Correct. So the city of Columbia, we did a study. They thought they needed a ring levy, but ultimately what we came to the conclusion of that the ring levy would be exhaustively too expensive. And what they really needed was to be able to access the treatment plant with chemical feed trucks and be able to haul off sludge. And so that FEMA funding is going towards elevation of an existing road and the creation of a new back access road on higher elevation in order to allow them to access the treatment plant even in the event of a 500-year flood from that river, and having a levee breach, which they did in the 2015 flood event. So it would finally is here. The funding is here, and we're about ready to kick off actually designing it this summer. So an example of something that's a non-traditional project for flood-related events, but it's at a treatment plant, and it makes that treatment plant more resilient, and it's being funded by FEMA, despite the fact that it doesn't address necessarily the flooding issue. It addresses the function of that treatment plant.
Thank you.
All right.
And Anna, one other point I'd like to raise is that we've seen some issues with some communities during responses where multiple jurisdictions have all identified the same suppliers for portable generators or rental equipment or supplies or materials. And then when they call to activate it, they find out that they're number 5 on the list and the material's already gone out. So it's just something to check to make sure that if you are relying upon outside vendors for any services or materials, that you are number 1 on their list and you won't get the materials in the event that they haven't already overcommitted their sources.
right? Or maybe diversifying a little bit and pulling from different resources.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. This has been a great discussion. Let's, I think, go ahead and open up the Slido, and we'll keep it going. So what actions can improve the cooperation among municipalities? Awesome. So right now it seems like regular meetings are, making sure those lines of communication are very open is something that you're interested in pursuing. What else? So you guys have your water sewer contracted by whom? I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's EOM, it's Enviroworks.
Do you guys meet fairly regularly or talk fairly regularly?
I talk with some of their employees.
We have various meetings with the different municipalities, but to be honest, usually we don't have one meeting with all of the municipalities at once unless it's more hurricane preparation type thing. So if we did increase that where it's a countywide thing, that would probably help.
Sounds like that would be really beneficial, yeah, rather than waiting for the impending storm, knowing and practicing that response ahead of time.
A lot of these things don't need to be reinvented or anything like that. I know Charleston Water came out with a very exhaustive preparedness post Hugo. And so in the region, I know that they're probably one of the leading on, they've got a 96-hour pre-plan so that their folks are off the roads and in emergency response mode and taking care of their families and whatnot, well ahead of the potential for the hurricane to strike. So it's something that you could absolutely take a larger one and then cut it down to fit what y'all need. Anyway, it's just a thought.
Great thought, Megan. Thank you. Got a couple typing, so I just want to give everyone a chance to get their thoughts in. Great. Okay, so it seems like we're leaning toward a regular meeting with all water and sewer providers. I think it would be really important to have everybody at the table at the same time instead of meeting separately. That's a great contribution. Any other thoughts here?
So stormwater is a utility. I know that's still sort of a evolving concept for a lot of municipalities. I know that I've been to quite a few meetings up here, and Charleston County is a great example of the stormwater knows no boundaries. It doesn't have a jurisdiction. It doesn't care who you are. It's going to go where it goes. So having regular occurring meetings that center on stormwater as if stormwater were a utility, and figuring out how to kind of work out problems. And it crosses over with a lot of the other areas that are part of this discussion with the Emergency Management Division and access to roads and parks and planning, because those can all help with, giving water some place to go and making, an area more resilient. So that could probably be included here with the municipalities.
Absolutely.
And it's difficult to fund. I think that's where a lot of municipalities are going with stormwater being treated as a utility, is it to identify better funding sources and be able to be more collective in that pooling of resources.
All right, y'all, any final thoughts for improving cooperation among municipalities? We are going to save the rest for the next meeting, and let's talk briefly about the timeline. We recently just found out this morning that we've been giving a little bit of an extension on the project. And so now, instead of submitting the plan at the end of March, we need to submit the plan to GMA by April 11th. So that gives us the benefit of being able to have one additional meeting prior to submitting the plan. So at the next meeting, we'll go through the other three: natural resource protection, stormwater management, and sustainable development. And we'll do the same exercise, generate different mitigation action ideas. And then following that, we'll have a meeting where we prioritize these different actions that we've come up with. We'll still need to do the public hearing on the draft plan. And we will be working on the website, getting the website up and running in the next week or so. Jeannie, Lindsay, anything to add?
I'll just add that I will send around minutes from oops, sorry, I think it was echoing. I'll send around minutes from past meetings, and I'll also be sending out an email with a link to the website and a survey. And so if you can all share that, we'll be working with some folks to get that posted on social media and on different sites so that we can really reach a lot of people. But if you can all just share that with any friends or family you have in the county and any of the cities, that would be really greatly appreciated. The more feedback we get, the better.
Definitely. All right, y'all.
Thank you all. I don't have anything to add, but I really appreciate everyone's time. I know that we all need each other to come up with these action items and ideas for our next plan. So thank you all very much, and please reach out if there are other ideas. We'll continue this discussion and keep talking about how this is shaping up into our 2023 to 2028 plan.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We really do appreciate your participation and your attendance, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in a couple weeks.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, y'all.